Friends, bienvenidos, amigos, espectadores. Guten Morgen, buongiorno. I am Chris Pabon, and I am here with my co-host, Josh Pritchett. Josh?
Good morning, my friends. Welcome. I'm Josh Pritchett, and this is Rediscovering the Federation. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great, Josh. Before we dive into the show, let me share that yesterday I was at KatsuCon, and it felt like I had been inside my home for 2 years, and finally someone let me out. It is an extraordinary manga and anime convention that is held at the Gaylord at National Harbor. And it was a sunny day. People came out in their best cosplays, and it was just such an awesome time to be there. We didn't have Katsucon last year because of the pandemic, and so finally I got to see old friends, make some new friends, see a ton of awesome cosplay, some very dedicated cosplayers, and it was just a fantastic time. So I want to give a shout out to Katsucon. Welcome back, and if you haven't been there yet, I hope next year you'll consider going. It's at the Gaylord at National Harbor, beautiful setting, and if you have time, go today. It's well worth it.
And I think I am going to take you up on that for next year, my friend.
Thank you.
And I have just the thing to wear, which I will be revealing this July at Shore Leave. So
Perfect.
yes. So
Josh,
just advanced promoting here. Come look for me at Shore Leave. I will be easy to find.
Promotions are welcome. So let's dive into it. This episode starts off in a dire situation that Khan has the Genesis device. Oh wait, no, sorry. Wrong movie. Burnham and the Admiral get together because Tarka and Book now have the selenium that they need to produce the weapon. But they know where they're at, and this is a delicate mission because they have to be stopped. And the Admiral expresses that the President of the Federation has her doubts regarding Burnham, and he decides to send along with Burnham, shall we say, a supervisor, which turns out to be Commander Non, who last we saw left aboard the Space Seed ship. So there's a brief welcome reunion between Non and Burnham, and the Admiral makes very clear that she has the right to override Burnham if she views it as necessary in order to stop Book. And so then we make it to the ship, and uncharacteristically, we see a very sober "let's fly" from Michael as he gives the order to go and find Book and Tarka. And so meanwhile, Book and Tarka are held up in what seems to be an asteroid field, the remains of something, but it provides them enough cover to hide. So the Federation ship Discovery comes in with their cloak, which we haven't seen in a while. And it's decided that because Michael Burnham knows Book's ship so well, that they will use a shuttle, also under cloak, to approach the ship, to dock with it and disable it and capture Book and Tarka without any resistance. But they didn't count on the evil genius of Tarka, who has rigged the hull with nanites that will become active if someone tries to do anything in contact with the ship. And in the journey to Book's ship, Saru's in command along with the Doctor and Bryce and Rice. And you see a little bit how within the Federation itself there's some discussion about whether Tarka may actually be right. And Dr. Culber manages to defuse the situation, saying, listen, we may have different opinions and views, but we need to find common ground if we are to succeed. And so they calm down, and as I mentioned, they try to carry out their mission and are surprised, and even Book is surprised because he asks what happened. And Tarka, in his very Tarka way, says, well, I created these nanites so that they would help defend the ship. And so we almost lose the members of the shuttle until they can be beamed out at the last moment, very Trek style, back onto Discovery. And with the device created and Book aware that Discovery is there and not willing to listen, they jump into the Mutara Nebula. Sorry, again, wrong movie. We'll talk about this later. How this entire episode was such a homage to the Wrath of Khan. So they jump in to where the device for species C10 is located. And Josh, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, I was going to mention about the nanites thing that Tarka installed. Book is seriously finding out that Tarka is the roommate from hell because he's just messing with his stuff, and
Yeah.
he's a Sheldon. He really is. But yeah, about what they find. So they jump into the inside of the device of the dark matter, and they're trying to find the device, which is very deep inside of of the entity of the ship they've been tracking. And again, I don't think you're wrong about the Wrath of Khan thing, because it is a real cat and mouse thing, sort of like the Hunt for Red October or The Enemy Below, where they're trying to find them, and it does escalate into a conflict where they're trying to damage each other without really hurting the other one. Narn does call Michael to the mat about, hey, shouldn't you be more aggressive? Shouldn't we try this? And lets her know that she hasn't brought a weapon on board Discovery that could conceivably take out Book's ship, and also without detonating the Book and Tarkin's weapon. In the end, what happens is Michael, comes up in a shuttle and negotiates with Book and says, okay, look, here's the deal. I'm putting this on the table, and I've been authorized to do this. Back down now. Come back with us. Let us open negotiations with 10C. And if that goes sideways, we're going to do your plan. Okay. And Book thinks about this and he says, yeah, I'm going to do this. But of course, Tarkin's like, no, screw this. I want that energy right now. I want my way. I want to go to my universe, which is not really his universe, but it's the universe he wants to go to. And he fires off the weapon before Book can stop him, and they blow up the central control of the machine. Unfortunately, it turns out that the power source to the machine is really on the other side of the wormhole, leading back to 10C's home system, which is located right outside our galaxy. And so they have failed to stop the machine. It is still on a rampage. Book and Tarka disappear. They basically jump out of there. And so that is kind of where we are left. Also and Narn and Michael, they talk and reconcile their feelings, and that, Narn is still welcome on Discovery. And she also hints that she undertook a number of Black Ops operations in the past year for Starfleet, and they did not go well. And also she did find her family back on her home world, or the descendants of her family, but apparently she did not fit in well with them. So she returned to Starfleet. So I don't know, maybe I'm seeing spinoff here. That sounds like some real possibilities. I would love a show, or even some short treks about what Narn was up to in the past year, what she's going to be up to going forward in her Starfleet career. Chris?
So, yeah, that is an apt summary, and we're left with, like, even though the device does the explosive does manage to depower the device, we're left at the end with the nagging feeling of because they get when Burnham is debriefing with the Admiral, they do get the notice from the Starfleet Mitchell that is left monitoring the situation that the device just turned back on and it's business as usual. And so Burnham mentions that this was an ominous way of making first contact. So let's talk about some of the things that we liked and perhaps disliked in this episode. I want to start us off with how wrong was Burnham to lead this mission? I mean, the president of the Federation is absolutely right. Burnham should never have led this mission. Too emotionally attached. The mere fact that you have Commander Non assigned to watch over her is proof that they couldn't trust her. And she proves that she was right, because all her efforts really are not to stop the ship from using the isolinium to blow up the weapon. Her efforts are just all about saving Book, even to the moment that she takes a shuttle. I mean, let's think about this for a second. She's the captain of the ship, and she's going to take a shuttle to go view to view, basically, with Book's ship. Which, by the way, I want to talk about this later, was another montage to the Wrath of Khan, because, as people may know, William Shatner and Ricardo Montalban never were in the same room together. So this was kind of like they were facing each other, but they were not actually in the same ship. So they really should have grounded her, and they should have had Saru command the ship in the mission to take out, because he's too emotionally compromised. And while this is a strength of the show that we see, like, how emotionally invested it is, it's a strength, but it's also a weakness. And in this case, it was a weakness that could have taken out the entire Federation, and it still might, because they did manage to detonate the device. But the president was right. She should never have been in command. Perhaps they could have had her go as an advisor, because she knows Book and she knows his ship's capabilities. But it was totally flawed that she was leading this mission against Book, because her primary interest was never to stop, even though she says it was never to stop blowing up the weapon. It was about saving Book, and it still is, because he has gone off for Tarkin. They're on the run, and so her mission basically failed, and it failed because she was too emotionally invested in saving Book. What do you think?
I think that is part of her. I mean, it is so ironic that Michael, who was raised on Vulcan, is extremely emotional, and that her Kobayashi Maru is that she needs to save everybody. Okay. Or she, we didn't see that though in the Prison Planet episode, but she definitely feels like, okay, I've got to jump in and, I've got to save all those people that are closest to me, because she couldn't save her parents. She couldn't save Giorgio. She couldn't save Lorca. I mean, so it's very strenuous on her that she can't afford to lose somebody. Whether Book is her lover or not, it's still a problem for her. I think that one thing I definitely liked, that obviously we knew this was not going to be the end of the entity of the 10 C's weapon, but the fact that Tarka got taken down a few pegs. I mean, this guy's been boasting about how, I'm so smart, I know what to do. And suddenly it's like, yeah, your weapon failed. I mean, he's, like the scientist who's got the ultimate weapon that's going to destroy Godzilla. And guess what? Godzilla just laughed it off. Which does lead me to think that the 10 C's definitely seem to be planning for a lot of things. They're highly adaptive. So, but we could get into predictions about that. Maybe it would have been better if Narn had just been in command of the mission overall, because I think certainly, yes, Saru would have also been somewhat emotionally compromised, because he was friends with Book too. But I think that they did need Michael to give them the specs on Book's ship. But of course, they could have just asked her to just say, "Hey, just write us down its capabilities and its armaments, and we'll go from there." I think, I think it's a hard call, but it definitely, I think it did make for some really good scenes between Sonequa and Rachel. the actress who plays Narn. So, overall, yeah, I didn't have as much of a problem with it, but I think I see your point. I think so.
Well, I think you made a great point. I want to follow up on Tarka and how even evil geniuses can be wrong. And yeah, he was very wrong here, despite the fact that he was absolutely sure this is going to work. It never even occurred to him that maybe the power source is on the other side. And so this also falls in line with how completely predictable everything he did was. And like you said, he's the roommate from hell, and Book should have known. I mean, the fact that he messed with the ship's defense system, so Tarka. The fact that he on his own reaches over and just fires a volley of quantum torpedoes at Discovery, so Tarka. I mean, at what point were you going to lock him out of access, at least to the ship's weapons? Everything that Tarka did was an easy call. Because why? Because he's Tarka, and he thinks that he's smarter than basically everyone else. And so he is going to do what Tarka does. It's like the parable of the turtle and the scorpion, when the scorpion says, "Hey, turtle, can you carry me across the water?" And the turtle says, "Well, wait a minute. You're a scorpion. You're like, you're going to prick me and then we'll both die." And it's like, no, absolutely not, because like I need you. And then they're going across the water and bang, the scorpion nails the turtle in the neck. And the turtle goes down and says, "Why did you do this?" And the scorpion's like, "Well, because I'm a scorpion. This is what I do." I mean, this is what Tarka does. At no point should Book have ever turned his back on him. Throughout the episode, Book seems surprised that Tarka does these things, like he fires the volley at quantum torpedoes at his friends. But he shouldn't, because this is Tarka. This is the legacy of evil geniuses, going back so long to even what you mentioned about like when people face Godzilla or Lex Luthor, evil geniuses, supremely confident in themselves, and yet also so darn completely predictable.
Yeah. I think it shows that, the analogy, I'm only half joking about the Sheldon Tarkin comparison, is that, you go back to the earlier. Oh, yeah. But I mean, you go back to the early seasons of Big Bang Theory, and it's like, Sheldon's overall problem is he has a problem relating to the other people in his life and seeing their point of view. Tarkin also has that same problem. He thinks he's so smart. He's the smartest guy in the room. He just doesn't give a hoot which way the wind blows. He's just going to go for what he wants because he thinks that's what everybody's doing. Everybody's just going for what they want. Well, I'm going for what I want. I'm the smartest guy in the room. So, booyah, I'm going to, kill this thing, and I'm going to absorb its energy, and I'm going to fly off to my perfect universe where my friend is waiting for me. And of course, that doesn't work. That backfires on him. And so now he's been taken down a few pegs, and I'm sure Book is now about this close to throwing him out the quantum torpedo tube and being done with him, because this has not worked out. He bet everything on this, and he came up short.
It worked out. It worked out horribly.
Yeah, horribly. That's the key thing. And one other thing I just want to mention, just from the tech side of it, I've been wondering why they're still bringing up photon torpedoes in the 32nd century. It's like, didn't we evolve to quantum torpedoes on Deep Space Nine and then also in the TNG movies? And it's like, oh, wait, they're still around, but I think that they can only use photon torpedoes on Discovery because it is an 800-year-old ship, and maybe they just can't change out the torpedo tubes for that. I'm just kind of a thing. Shout out to anybody who's wondering about that.
Well, I was actually wondering on the tech side, do tractor beams not work on a ship that's trying to jump? Because when they were in the wreckage of that asteroid field, I kept on wondering, why not just tractor beam them and lock them in place? So that's a question I would like answered. Can you get out of a tractor beam using the spore drive? Because that would seem to me the only reason why they would not have just came in, launched the tractor beam on them, and just held them in place.
That's a good question too. I'm wondering about that myself now that you mentioned that. Why not just grab him with a tractor beam and hold him in place? I mean, I'm assuming it can, because of just the amount of energy that it appears that the jump seems to exert or discharge when it gets ready to cross the quantum realm and go to the other side of space. So it's possible that it doesn't work, and um, also given the fact that Book's ship seems to comes apart and then pulls back together. I mean, maybe that is also a good defense against tractor beams, because I mean, if several objects can discharge it, can break off at once and then come back together, maybe tractor beams don't necessarily work on that.
So, talking about things that work and don't work, the title of this episode is Rubicon, in
Mhm.
reference to when Caesar crossed the Rubicon and started a 5-year civil war in Rome. And so, Rubicon has been always representative of an act from which you can't come back from. My question is, what if you crossed the Rubicon and no one noticed? So, they successfully deactivated the device, only to have species 10C basically flip a switch and start it all over again. So it's a matter, I think, of perspective, that from the Federation side of things, they're thinking, well, this will, of course, will be seen as an act of war, because perhaps they're thinking of themselves as them and species 10C, like maybe not exactly at this level, but maybe just a little bit like this. But as we've seen by them basically just turning the piece back on, and of course, maybe we'll see some type of excursion from species 10C later on in the remaining episodes. But for right now, it seems like the elephant and the ant. That the ant is thinking, okay, I am going to attack this elephant, and the moment I do it, it's going to cause repercussions, and they're going to attack back. Whereas in reality, I think what we're seeing right now, that species 10C might be so technologically advanced and so beyond the Federation that this became like, yeah, they turned off our device. Perhaps they're not the first civilization to successfully turn off our device. We're just going to turn it back on and keep on doing what we're doing. So for me, it's a matter of perspective that within the storyline, the Federation is assuming an equal response, but maybe they shouldn't, because they're not really here nor here, but they're like here, and species 10C is probably way up here. So I wanted to see what you thought, Josh, of that, this perspective of like, what if you cross the Rubicon, but no one really notices?
I think I'm going to liken this to a Marvel analogy. Okay, let's just say the Hulk punches a Celestial. Okay, so the Hulk is incredibly powerful, obviously, but is the Celestial going to notice or even care if the Hulk or Thor hits it? Obviously, the Celestial noticed that the Eternals stopped the birth of one of its own, and they noticed that. So obviously, yeah, it does sound like, okay, yeah, we noticed you turned off our device. Big whoop, we're turning it back on. Of course, that's not necessarily the end.
Right.
There might very well still be a greater response, or maybe they're so, it could also be, like one of the theories you hear people spout off about with why have we not met any aliens from other planets in real life? And some of it maybe some people say that, okay, they don't, recognize our communication signals as language. Maybe they just think it's background noise. So maybe they just don't even notice the Federation and all the other worlds in the Milky Way. They just see it as someplace to mine. And the 10Cs could be so alien, so far beyond alien in their thinking, beyond Vulcans or Klingons or any other species that the Federation has encountered in almost 1,000 years of existence, that they may have to rewrite their books on this one. So I guess we're going to see what happens in the next couple of episodes with regards to this, because I want to I hope we're not going to get left with like some cliffhanger at the end of this season where we don't actually see the 10C, where we don't actually encounter them and find out what's going on here. It would be kind of helpful, so we can know more about their thinking rather than us waiting a whole year for a new episode to come out.
So speaking as a whole about this episode, and at the start I did mention a couple of times, make a couple of Wrath of Khan references. I wanted to just say that I thought this episode overall was a huge nod of love to Wrath of Khan. I mean, we had everything. We had the cat and mouse chase. We have this incredibly powerful device that we've got to stop them from detonating. It was just a love note to Wrath of Khan, and the only thing that was missing was someone having to go down to the engine room to fix the warp drive. That was the only thing that was missing from here. And so I liked it a lot, because especially I believe this is let's see, 92. Is this the 40th anniversary of Wrath of Khan?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's just been out in theaters again recently, as a matter of fact.
The greatest space opera in the history of space operas.
I mean, I think there's a lot of there's a lot of debate, because I do think, as far as the greatest Star Trek movie, it comes down to either 2 or 6, and because they both deal with such themes. And if we want to talk for a minute about Wrath of Khan, it does succeed. It does succeed in so many ways over motion picture. It taps into the whole idea of Kirk's insecurities about getting older and regrets that he has. It brings back this great episode, this great enemy that from the original series, and the popular Ricardo Montalban reprising his role as Khan. You do have the great space battle that was obviously, that we didn't get in the first movie. That it isn't this big space entity V'ger. It is a battle of good and evil between the Enterprise and Khan and his group. It is the definitive Star Trek film in so many ways. It's what got a younger generation of fans that only knew Star Wars that thought, oh well, Star Trek, that's something my dad watched back in the 60s, and they got them. It's like, man, this Captain Kirk guy and this Mr. Spock guy are really cool, and it's what saved the Star Trek franchise. And of course, you've got all the news these days about Nick Meyer coming back to Star Trek, that he's got some sort of big project going that's being kept on the DL. So I mean, I do hope that goes forward. And it has been 40 years since the Wrath of Khan.
I think Nick Meyer was involved in season 1 of Discovery. I'm not absolutely sure, but I think he was. But
a little bit, yeah.
And speaking to you right now, I just realized, I guess the scene where Burnham is in the shuttle and Book's on a ship and they're kind of looking at each other through the glass, I guess that's the ultimate nod to Kirk and Spock being in the engine room.
Oh, you're right. I think you're absolutely right about that. I think that's the closest they could come to, this big separation. I mean, I was thinking about more in the separation of, where Book and Michael are in their relationship and how far apart they are and how they're trying to get back together. And they don't want to lose each other. But at the same time, granted, we're not going to have to deal with, crossing life, death, and life again type of things here. I hope there's a way to save Book. Targa, not so much.
Yeah, I agree with that. So one thing that I'm conflicted about, Joss, that I thought was awesome, but I also thought was quite not so awesome, was in that scene in the shuttle. Dr. Colbert manages to diffuse an intense situation, and he managed to bring people together around the notion of common ground, which Burnham uses later on with Non. So I thought that was awesome. But at the same time, it was like, wait a minute, this is the same guy that was having profound doubts just the episode before. So I know that he and Stamets went on a walk, but that must have been one hell of a walk, because he seems to be back in control and absolutely sure of himself. So I don't know. I mean, I like seeing the very in control Colbert who knew what he was doing, who could like provide guidance to others. But at the same time, narrative wise, I'm like, but wait a minute, this is the guy who was completely unsure of himself just an episode ago. So, I mean, this is one of those things where I'm conflicted because I'm like, I thought it was awesome, and yet story wise, I thought it was kind of not so awesome. So I wanted to ask you what you thought.
I look at it this way, with Hugh, is that I think in his own private quarters when he's with Stamets, okay, he can let his guard down and he can feel like, okay, I am so darn overwhelmed, honey. I don't know what to do. But when he's with everybody outside of there, when he's with Rice and Bryce, or maybe it's Reese. Yeah, it's Reese. Reese and Bryce. Yeah, I'm sorry. He has to tap that down. He has to be like, okay, I've got to be in charge. I've got to be in command of myself, and I've got to be the guy the voice of reason in this room, because no one else can do it. In a way, that goes back to another Star Trek thing, is the balance of terror, when Kirk has to have this heart-to-heart with McCoy and he's in his quarters, he's taken 10 minutes, and he's admitting he's overwhelmed because if he makes the wrong decision, okay, the Enterprise could be destroyed, the Federation could be at war with the Romulans, am I doing the right thing? And there just comes a point where we cannot bottle up these emotions inside of us. It's not healthy. We have to let our guard down, because you just can't go on like that. And I think in that instance, okay, what we saw in the previous episode where Hugh and Stamets go off and have a little bit of alone time on the holodeck and relax, and just, he's able to tell his husband that this is what's going on. This is what's bothering me. I'd be far more worried about him if he didn't do that.
Okay.
So I kind of think it's just him having to separate out of his personalities. This is what I can do here, and then this is what I need so I can do my job. And what we saw in the last episode was what he needed to do his job, and what we saw in this episode was him having to do what he had to do. And it was the right call. And a real shout out to the actors who play Reese and Bryce, that they got more scenes. And this is something I've been saying for a while, is you have all these other actors and characters who are supposed to have backstories and everything. This is one thing I thought was totally awesome, is Reese and Bryce are finally, getting to have some real dialogue and finally getting to talk about some stuff. We're seeing them be more characters. We're seeing that throughout this season with Ono and with them and all the other characters. Because, I mean, it's like we've been seeing these people since season 1, and they just kept getting pushed to the background in favor of, obviously Michael and Saru are the lead characters, but even when you brought in characters like Blue and everybody and Gray and on and on, I think they kept getting, I think starting last year we started seeing them come more into their own.
I want to follow up on I want to follow up on that quickly, because I think we've seen the bridge crew get more screen time in this and the previous episode than before. So I wanted to bounce off of you. Is the absence of Adira and Gray after the Trill homeworld allowing for more screen time for the rest of the bridge crew?
I think so. I mean, I want Adara and Gray to come back because they're such great characters, but I also want to see Onu and or Joanne and Reese and Bryce and all the other characters that are on the bridge to grow and see more about them. See more with Linus, see more of all these other characters and get their feelings rather than them just rotating in and out. I think that's going back to the movies and Wrath of Khan. I think that was so important for George Takei and has Sulu and Chekhov and Uhura for their characters to finally grow and develop and people to take them more seriously. It goes back to something Leonard Nimoy said when he was directing Star Trek 3 and 4. He sees directing as being like directing an episode of Mission Impossible where all the characters have a different function and they bring something to the table. And that's what I want to see with this. I want to see everybody bring something to this thing. And I'm glad we saw more of that in this episode. And I want to keep seeing more of it. I was glad to see the scene where Reese and Bryce had that argument over Book's actions. Is he right or is he wrong? There is a real debate on Discovery, on the ship itself, not the show, but on the ship itself about what's going on here. I mean, do we kill this thing to save all these worlds or do we negotiate? What's the right thing to do? And a lot of, just that was awesome how they handled that. And I'd like to see more scenes like that throughout the show.
Well, speaking of what we want to see for upcoming episodes, I think this is a good segue to talk about what we think we might see in the final few episodes and what our theories are. So one thing I want to start off with is Saru and President Tarina. I think it might be close to Ponfar time. They seem to be ready to, in the future, to take it up a notch. So this is like, welcome news for Saru because I think it's been a slow brew getting up to this point. And I love that scene we had with Dr. Culber, where Dr. Culber, rightfully so, calls him an idiot for not wanting to pursue this venue. But if I had been Saru, I think I would have gone to Dr. Culber and I would have asked, physiologically, is this possible in your medical opinion? But I definitely think we're going to see, President Saru and Tarina have a successful, let's call it a first date, because I think that's what it is. And I think we see some romance in the air in the future. What do you think?
I think it is a logical assumption. Yeah, I think Tarina and Saru, I think it's been pretty obvious throughout the season that they're becoming one of the real power couples on Discovery. So we hope that, the best for them. I don't know exactly what the rule. I think the rules of Ponfar have kind of changed a lot throughout Star Trek. So I think she might actually see Saru as being a very logical choice for a mate. That, as far as Vulcan, because she is Vulcan, she's not Romulan. So so that's, I think that's very possible that's going to happen.
Of course, that might also mean some fodder for storytelling on upcoming episodes, maybe even a next season, that the purists, who do seem to still have some power on Navarre, might object to relationship interspecies.
Yeah, but then again, they have to look at it this way. I mean, because a lot of even the purists kind of, adhere to a lot of the theories and ideas of Spock, and Spock was half human.
True.
And yeah, you definitely still do have a lot of purists. So yeah, I'm sure they will object. I'm sure that will be a conflict for them. That might be a really interesting episode to pursue for them. Is do we really want to have does is she going is she going to balance her responsibilities as president of Vulcan and as a member of the Federation with her love for Saru? We will see. I think that's definitely something's going forward. I have a lot of confidence in the writers that I think they will come up with something very exciting for them. I do kind of want to see this happen. I'm hoping we don't get to the season finale and see the president killed by 10C or something. Although, hey, I mean, it's very possible that the machine will be heading towards Navarre before the end of the season, and then it's gut check time, folks. We gotta decide what we're gonna do. As far as my predictions, I do know you mentioned this off camera, and I hope you don't mind me stealing your prediction.
Go for it.
I do think that Tarkin is probably going to be offered to the 10C as part of a peace deal. To say, hey, guys, okay, this is the guy who tried to blow up your machine the first time. Here you go, you can have him. We don't care.
Gotta be book 2 though.
It could be book 2 or book. I mean, here's one question though I do have is like, if they're going to expand the spore drive, how exactly are they going to get it to work? Because so far we know there's had to be a biological interface. Somebody has to mentally interface with the spores in order to do that. Now, are we going to say, oh, we found out that Zora can interface with the spore drive and make it work? Does that mean we're going to export Zora to all the other starships in the Federation so that they can all take advantage of spore drive? That may be something for another season, but that's something to think about.
I think the spore drive program is about to suffer a setback because either Book is going to be offered up in a package deal with 10C, and I am absolutely in agreement with you. Like, send Tarka to 10C as a peace offering. Like, if he doesn't go to 10C, you know what? Send him back to the Orion Syndicate. But there is no way Tarka is going home anytime soon, and he darn well should not. So whether it's just Tarka or Book and Tarka, but yeah, I think the spore drive program is going to suffer a setback because you need Book because he's the human interface. Even that secondary spore drive that they stole off of Voyager, I mean, it's only working because of Book. There's never any mention that, oh, we have this other guy on Voyager who we think we can get it to work. Like, no. So they have the technology, but they still need a driver, which might mean that people from Quazon suddenly become like, super valuable as like the only people who can like use spore drives. But yeah, I think the spore drive is going to suffer a setback. And yeah, I think we're in agreement that whatever happens to the 10C, there is going to have to be some type of peace offering. And I think part of it is like, here's the guy who did this to you. And my only question I have is it going to be Tarka or Tarka and Book? But either way, whether it's Book being sent off to the 10C or Book being sent off to Penal Colony, I think we're going to see the power couple of Saru and President Tarina next season replace the power couple that we had, which was Burnham and Book.
I think that's a safe assumption. Although, you made the analogy a while back about Cisco and Cassidy on Deep Space Nine, and I don't think Cassidy was in Federation jail longer than a year, and then she was, she got her pilot's license back, and she was back on Deep Space Nine, and they picked up where they had left. Cisco and her picked up where they left off, and of course, they got married in the final episodes. So, I don't know. It's gonna. I mean, I don't have any access to David Ajar's contract. I mean, I'm assuming that because he's got a credit in the opening title sequences that you're expecting him to be on there for a while. So,
I
but then again, Mary Wiseman, she was a title character and she's left. We don't know we don't even know if she's going to be back this season. So
Yeah, let me touch on that because when they mentioned we have someone to like oversee you, I was absolutely sure it's going to be Mary Wiseman's character. So I was completely surprised by the reappearance of Commander Non. But I like that because, as I mentioned before, I thought it was kind of wrong that they just left her on the Space Seed ship and like, okay, maybe we'll see you one day again. So they definitely left a hint open that she could be returning to Discovery, which would make sense. I think the ship does lack a security officer, and I thought that they aptly filled in what has been going on, saying that she's been taking on some dark ops for Starfleet against the Orion Syndicate, because it makes complete sense. I mean, the Orion Syndicate probably still has pockets that want to rise, which we see on the episode on the space barge where they're trying to purchase the isolinium. So it makes sense that you would have it. They don't explicitly mention Section 31, but it makes sense that you would have some Doc Ops trying to take out the last pockets of resistance to the Federation within the Orion Syndicate. So I love that they gave her that backstory and that we see her again and that she's got the upgrades. We no longer have the breather because it's 800 years later. They should be able to fix things like that. So I like that we saw her, and she's being assertive, and that they leave the door open for I'd like to come back. My theory is that maybe not this season, but I think next season we will see her come back to join the crew because it absolutely makes sense.
yeah, I think definitely. I would like to see her back. She is a really great character. I've liked her character ever since she came on in season 2. I would like to see more of her. Of course, it could also some of these dark ops situations that we're talking about here could also be a nice lead back in for the Klingons. I mean, just speaking personally, and I know we've talked about it a lot this season, but I think we're ready to see the Klingons come back and have a commanding presence in another season of Discovery.
So, I earlier in the season when we did one of these theories of what we think will happen, I had predicted that we would see Mary Wiseman again. But I got to be honest, Josh, I'm not so sure anymore.
Well, there was the big rumors that came out. I think it's been about a week or two ago about some future spinoffs that Paramount Plus is cooking with Alex Kurtzman, and one of them, of course, is a Starfleet Academy. And as I said last week, I've been hearing rumors about Starfleet Academy shows for over 30 years, and they've never happened.
Yeah.
And maybe the episode where Mary Wiseman, where where she led those cadets and Adira in on that planet, maybe that's going to be the jumping off point finally for that Starfleet Academy has a direct spinoff to Star Trek Discovery, just to keep stories in the 32nd century. Because I mean, the next new show that's going to come out is Strange New Worlds, and that's way back in the 23rd century, pre-Kirk. And then, of course, we've got Picard, which is a post-TNG era, along with Prodigy and Lower Decks, which are also post-TNG.
Huge
and then, of course,
Lower Decks. Huge love.
And of course, we also heard rumors that Section 31 is back on the front burner again. And so who knows? I mean, I'm certainly up for more Star Trek content as they've got it staggered because, I mean, we did find out last week also that Picard is going to end after season 3. And so they will have more room. Who knows? I would definitely, love to see Mary Wiseman come back as Tilly and teaching cadets. And what one thing, and a lot of people will back me up on this, is James T. Kirk Prime, not Kelvin, but Prime. He served as an instructor for a while at Starfleet Academy before he became captain of the Enterprise. It's mentioned in a lot of places. So, that could be Tilly's jumping off point to getting her own ship, is, serving a few years as an instructor and then getting offered a command, because that was a goal of hers at one point. So, I think there's a lot of, I don't think we've seen the end of Tilly. And I think we will, we're going to be sitting here waiting, but I think she's coming back. Probably not on Discovery, but on her own show. And, something to ask her if we see her at a future convention. So,
I am still holding out a candle that before the end of this season, we will see Jet Reno one more time. And I love that in this past episode, at least we got verbally a reference, like, have Reno do that.
It's like, yeah, okay, yeah, somebody get Jet out here. Okay, yeah, but yeah, I do love Reno. So yeah, we need that. We need our. It's been a few episodes. We need our Reno fix.
We absolutely do.
Yes.
So, Josh, we're about to hit a 1 hour mark. So I think this is the point where we should give our parting notes to the people who giving their time to watch us. And for that, I thank them. And I'm going to start off with myself. And I am Chris Pabon. You can follow me at Verde Cosplay on Instagram. And especially today and the coming days, you'll see a lot of fantastic cosplay from Katsucon. Again, a shout out to the organizers of Katsucon, a fantastic anime and manga convention. Go to my Instagram and see some fabulous cosplay.
Once again, I am Josh Pritchett. You can find me at Josh Pritchett Jr. on Facebook, and my short story collection, Bigfoot and Other Tales of the Supernatural, is still available on Amazon, Kindle, and I will be selling copies at Shore Leave, where you can also see me in my fabulous new costume, which I'm not going to be posting any pictures of until Shore Leave weekend. So if you want to see me, come over, get some pictures, come on over. I'll look forward to seeing you. And until next week,
peace and long life. Call.